A
You need to
heated
come
words
with us right
exchanged by
now.
Chief and infamous
We can't
Karen.
guarantee
She
your
don't
safety
care.
if you remain
It
in
was a
this
bright
area.
morning in the small town of Riverview. The sun had just started to climb over the horizon, casting a warm golden glow on the streets and buildings. The neighborhood was waking up slowly, birds chirping in the trees, children laughing as they walked to school, and shopkeepers opening their doors to welcome the day. Among the residents, one person was preparing for an important gathering that would set the tone for the community's week ahead. His name was Chief. Chief was not just any resident. He was a figure of respect in the neighborhood. People often looked up to him for guidance, advice, and sometimes just a friendly word. He had spent years building trust with the community, helping solve disputes, organizing events, and making sure that everyone felt included. To the people of Riverview, Chief represented calmness, fairness, and authority. He was the kind of person who spoke gently, but when he spoke, people listened. On this particular morning, Chief had arranged a small meeting at the local community center. It was a regular gathering where residents came to discuss issues affecting their streets, parks, schools, and local businesses. Chief loved these meetings. He saw them as opportunities to bring people together, to listen to their concerns, and to find solutions that would benefit everyone. He always prepared carefully, making sure every voice was heard. As Chief arranged the chairs in a circle and set out papers and pens for notes, he felt a sense of calm satisfaction. Everything was going according to plan. A few early attendees had already arrived, exchanging greetings and sharing quiet laughter. The air was friendly, warm, and welcoming. Chief smiled to himself. These mornings were his favorite part of the week, moments where the community came together and everyone felt like part of one big family. However, that morning there was one person who was about to change the entire atmosphere of the room. Her name was Karen. People in the neighborhood often referred to her quietly as infamous Karen, and not without reason. Karen had a reputation for speaking her mind, sometimes too loudly, and for not worrying much about rules, manners, or what others might think. She had strong opinions, and she made sure everyone around her knew them. She had been involved in many heated discussions before, often leaving people surprised or uncomfortable with the force of her words. Chief had seen her coming from a distance, walking briskly toward the community center, her eyes sharp and her posture confident. She carried herself as though she owned the place, though she did not. Chief, as always, welcomed everyone, hoping that this meeting could remain calm and productive. He was aware of Karen's reputation, but he also believed that everyone deserved a chance to participate in discussions, even if they were difficult or challenging personalities. As Karen entered the room, her presence immediately drew attention. Conversations quieted down and people instinctively watched her movements. She did not smile, nor did she greet anyone politely. Instead, she scanned the room with a quick, assessing glance. Her eyes met Chief's, and for a brief moment there was a silent acknowledgement between them. Chief offered a warm, calm greeting. "Good morning, Karen. I'm glad you could join us today." Karen's response was a slight nod, almost dismissive. She did not return the smile or extend any warmth. She had a way of making people feel both noticed and uneasy at the same time. Her reputation was not entirely unfounded. She had a directness that could be intimidating, and she seemed unconcerned about how others perceived her. Some people admired her honesty, while others found her overwhelming or difficult. Chief took a deep breath, reminding himself to remain patient. He had dealt with strong personalities before, and he knew that the key was to remain composed. He began the meeting in his usual calm manner, welcoming all attendees and thanking them for coming. He encouraged people to share their thoughts, assured them that every opinion mattered, and explained the agenda for the day. For the first few minutes, everything seemed normal. Residents spoke one by one, bringing up issues like the broken streetlights, the need for better playground equipment, and scheduling community cleanups. Chief listened carefully, nodding, taking notes, and asking gentle follow-up questions. The room was filled with ordinary conversations about ordinary problems, the kind that could usually be solved with teamwork and good planning. But Karen was not interested in ordinary. She tapped her fingers impatiently on the table, waiting for her turn to speak. When Chief finally asked if she had anything to add, she leaned forward and spoke quickly, almost cutting off the flow of conversation. Her voice was firm, loud enough for everyone to hear, and it carried a confidence that demanded attention. "Why are we even talking about these small things?" she said. "These issues are not important. People are wasting time on things that don't matter." The room went quiet. Some residents looked shocked, others uncomfortable. Chief paused, choosing his words carefully. He had expected strong opinions, but Karen's tone was sharper than usual. "I understand your concern, Karen," Chief replied gently, "but these small issues affect the daily lives of people here. If we don't address them, they can become bigger problems over time." Karen's eyes narrowed slightly and she leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "I don't think you really understand what's important. You're too focused on rules and procedures. That doesn't solve anything." Chief smiled faintly, keeping his composure. He knew that responding with anger or frustration would only escalate the situation. He had learned over the years that patience and calm reasoning were more powerful than confrontation. He tried to bring the discussion back to the agenda, but Karen was not done. She continued speaking, questioning not just the plans, but Chief's authority, his decisions, and even the way he conducted meetings. The tension in the room was growing. Some residents shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure of how to respond. They respected Chief, but Karen's confidence was contagious. It made people wonder if perhaps she had a point, even if her approach was harsh. Chief took a deep breath. He had faced challenges before, but there was something different about Karen. She did not just argue for the sake of argument. She seemed determined to make her presence felt, to shake the room with her words. Yet Chief remained composed. He reminded himself silently that this was an opportunity, not a threat. He could show the community how to handle disagreements with grace and clarity. As the meeting continued, Chief spoke calmly, explaining why each issue was important, how it affected the community, and what steps could be taken to solve them. He addressed Karen's questions directly, without dismissing her, and tried to involve her in a constructive way. However, Karen remained firm in her stance, nodding occasionally, but often interrupting or raising new points that challenged the flow of the meeting. Despite the tension, there was a strange energy in the room. People could feel the clash of personalities, and it made them more attentive. They listened not just to the discussion, but to the way Chief handled Karen, the way he maintained control without being harsh, the way he tried to include her even when she was difficult. It was a lesson in patience, diplomacy, and leadership. By the end of the meeting, Chief felt a mixture of relief and determination. He had navigated the morning without letting anger or frustration take over. Karen had made her presence known, and she had challenged him, but Chief had shown that calm reasoning, respect, and patience could withstand even the most direct confrontation. As people left the community center, some whispered about Karen, some about Chief, and some about the unusual energy in the room. It was clear that today's meeting would be remembered, not for the issues discussed, but for the personalities involved and the quiet lessons about patience, respect, and leadership. Chief sat for a moment, reflecting on the morning. He knew that this was only the beginning. Karen's presence was a challenge, yes, but it was also a reminder that leadership was not about avoiding conflict. It was about facing it with grace and clarity. And in Riverview, Chief was ready for whatever came next. The morning air outside the community center had grown warmer, but inside, the atmosphere was noticeably heavier. The initial pleasantries and calm discussions of the earlier part of the meeting had faded. Karen had made her presence known, and now the real challenge was beginning. Chief felt it in the room, the shift from calm cooperation to something charged, almost electric. People were watching, some with curiosity, others with apprehension, and the way Karen carried herself commanded attention. She had a knack for drawing eyes without even trying. Chief, though experienced, understood that handling Karen would require more than calm words. It would require strategy and awareness. He knew that ignoring her or letting frustration show could escalate the situation. But he also knew that allowing her to dominate the conversation would undermine the purpose of the meeting. Karen, however, seemed completely unaware, or perhaps unconcerned, about the balance of power in the room. She leaned forward, her elbows on the table, her eyes fixed on Chief, as if daring him to respond. "You're too slow," Karen said abruptly, cutting into Chief's explanation about the new community garden project. "We waste time talking in circles. People need solutions, not long speeches and excuses." Chief blinked, maintaining his composure. He understood the impatience, but he also knew that impulsive answers could lead to confusion and mistakes. He took a moment to choose his words. "I appreciate your concern, Karen," he said calmly, "but taking time to plan carefully ensures that our solutions are effective and sustainable. Quick decisions often create bigger problems later." Karen raised her eyebrows and let out a small, dismissive laugh. "Sustainable. Effective, you mean slow and boring. People don't have time for all this careful planning. They want things to work now." A few of the attendees shifted in their seats. Some nodded in agreement with Karen, while others exchanged worried looks. It was clear that she had a way of making even the most careful statements seem less important. Chief realized that he needed to reframe the conversation so that both Karen and the other participants could engage constructively. He leaned slightly forward, speaking in a firm yet respectful tone. "I understand your frustration, Karen. Immediate results are tempting, and I agree that action is important, but we must also consider long-term impact. If we act too quickly, we might fix one problem and create another." Karen smirked slightly. "You just like hearing yourself talk. All these words don't help anyone. You think rules and plans make you better than everyone else, but they don't. They just slow things down." Chief felt a flicker of irritation but pushed it aside. He had learned long ago that anger never solved anything, especially in front of a crowd. Instead, he focused on listening, even when the words stung. He knew that Karen thrived on pushing boundaries, testing limits, and seeing who could be shaken. He had to remain steady like a rock in a storm. "Karen," he said calmly, "I respect that you want fast results. That drive is valuable. But I also believe that good leadership involves patience and careful planning. If we combine both, your urgency and our planning, we can achieve results that last and benefit everyone." Karen's expression did not change. She leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. "Combine both," she repeated mockingly. "Sounds like an excuse for doing nothing. I don't need excuses. I need action." The room felt tense. Every word they exchanged seemed to reverberate through the walls. The other attendees were quiet, unsure how to respond. They admired Chief for staying calm, but Karen's boldness was hard to ignore. Some residents were beginning to question whether she might be right, even if her delivery was abrasive. Others worried that the meeting could spiral out of control if she continued this way. Chief decided to redirect the conversation with a question, hoping to involve Karen in a constructive way without escalating the tension. "All right, Karen," he said gently, "if you have ideas for immediate action, let's hear them. We can discuss how to implement them effectively." Karen's eyes lit up slightly. She had been waiting for the chance to speak, and now she had the floor. "First," she began, "we need better street lighting. People can't walk safely at night because some areas are dark and unsafe. Second, we need stricter rules for speeding cars. Kids play on these streets and no one is paying attention. Third, the parks are full of trash. You plan committees and meetings, but no one actually cleans up." Chief nodded thoughtfully. He could see the merit in her suggestions, even if her delivery was harsh. "Those are valid points, Karen. We can take action on all three," he said. "For street lighting, I can speak to the city officials this week. For speeding, we can organize a neighborhood watch program. And for the parks, we can schedule a community cleanup day, maybe even involve local schools." Karen frowned slightly. "And what about accountability?" she asked. "You say you'll organize these things, but who makes sure it actually happens? People promise, then forget." Chief appreciated her concern. "You're right," he said. "We need accountability. We can assign volunteers for each task, set clear deadlines, and check progress regularly. That way, things actually get done, and we can celebrate our success as a community." Karen leaned back, studying him carefully. "I'll believe it when I see it," she said softly, almost as if challenging him to prove it. The tension eased slightly, but it was clear that Karen's attitude had shifted from confrontation to cautious engagement. She still demanded attention, but now she had a sense of purpose that could be channeled constructively. Chief realized that the key to handling her was not to argue endlessly, but to guide her energy toward solutions. As the meeting progressed, Karen began to contribute more ideas. She suggested improvements to the community center, ways to support local businesses, and programs for children and teenagers. Her tone remained firm, but it was less abrasive. Chief encouraged her input, praised her ideas when appropriate, and gently reminded her to allow others to speak. Slowly, a balance began to form. Other residents started to participate again, inspired by Karen's passion and by Chief's calm leadership. The room felt alive, not with conflict but with possibility. People were thinking, contributing, and realizing that even challenging personalities could bring valuable insight if handled correctly. Chief felt a sense of relief. He knew that navigating Karen's strong presence was difficult, but it was also an opportunity for growth for both him and the community. By the end of the discussion, some of the initial tension had faded. Karen still had her sharp edges, but she was engaged in a way that was productive. Chief had successfully guided the conversation from confrontation to collaboration, showing that patience, respect, and careful listening could turn even the most challenging situation into a constructive outcome. As the meeting wrapped up, Karen stood to leave. She did not offer a smile or a handshake, but she nodded toward Chief. It was a small gesture, but it carried weight, a silent acknowledgement that, for now, there was mutual respect. Chief watched her go, feeling a mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. Handling Karen had required all of his focus, but it had also reminded him why he valued leadership rooted in calm reasoning and respect. Outside, the sun had climbed higher, casting brighter light on the streets of Riverview. People left the community center with new ideas, new energy, and a deeper understanding of the importance of communication and patience. Chief stayed behind for a few moments, reflecting on the morning. Karen's boldness had challenged him, but it had also tested his skills as a leader and his ability to maintain composure in the face of conflict. He knew that this was just the beginning. Karen's presence would continue to be a test, but he also understood that handling strong personalities with respect and strategy could strengthen the community rather than divide it. Chief felt ready for whatever came next, confident that the lessons from today would guide him in the days and weeks ahead. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows of the community center, casting long shadows on the walls. What had started as a routine meeting now carried a different energy, one that was heavier, charged, and unpredictable. Chief could feel it in the room. The calm focus of earlier conversations had begun to unravel, replaced by tension and anticipation. Karen, with her sharp eyes and unwavering confidence, sat leaning forward in her chair, watching everyone like a hawk. She had already made her presence felt, but now she seemed poised to push the limits even further. Chief, aware of the mounting tension, kept his composure. He had dealt with strong personalities before, but Karen's intensity was unique. She didn't just express opinions. She challenged authority, tested patience, and seemed almost to enjoy the discomfort she caused. Yet Chief knew that losing his temper or responding with harsh words would only escalate the situation. He needed calm, clear reasoning, and perhaps a little patience that felt like a mountain anchored in the storm. The discussion had shifted to the upcoming community festival, an event meant to celebrate the neighborhood and bring residents together. Chief was explaining the schedule, responsibilities, and preparations. He was careful to include everyone, assigning tasks and encouraging participation. It was a moment that normally brought excitement and unity, but Karen interrupted as usual. "Excuse me, but why do we even have these festivals?" she said, her voice loud enough to stop Chief mid-sentence. "People spend hours planning, decorating, and running booths, and for what? A few hours of fun? You say it builds community, but it's just busy work. You're wasting everyone's time." The room fell silent. Some attendees shifted uneasily, unsure how to respond. Chief took a deep breath, feeling the familiar heat of challenge, and spoke calmly. "Karen, the festival is an opportunity for people to come together, celebrate their efforts, and build connections. It might seem small, but these moments strengthen our community. Joy and connection are as important as work and planning." Karen leaned back in her chair, a faint smirk forming on her lips. "Joy and connection? You mean forced smiles and pretending everyone gets along? People don't need that. They need results. Not a festival, not speeches, not committees. Real results." Chief could see the room's energy shifting. Some residents nodded in agreement, while others exchanged worried glances. Karen had a way of making her words feel urgent and persuasive, even when the tone was harsh. Chief realized he needed to assert his point without escalating anger. He chose his words carefully, speaking in a calm but firm voice. "I hear you, Karen," he said. "Results are important, and I agree that we should focus on meaningful action. But connection and trust among neighbors are also results. If people feel isolated or unheard, the community cannot function effectively. Both action and connection matter." Karen's smirk faded slightly, replaced by a look of challenge. Connection and action, that's vague. You're just trying to sound wise. People don't care about speeches. They care about what gets done. All this talk just slows progress. You think your words make you better, but they don't. They just waste time. Chief felt a flicker of frustration, but pushed it aside. He had to respond carefully. I understand that talking alone doesn't fix problems, he said. That's why we have plans, volunteers, and deadlines. Talking allows us to organize effectively so our actions are meaningful. Planning is part of action, not a replacement for it. Karen crossed her arms and leaned forward again. Planning, organization, you mean excuses? I've seen it before. Meetings, discussions, committees, and in the end, nothing changes. People promise, then forget. You're just another talker who thinks words are enough. The tension in the room was palpable. Some residents shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to speak or stay silent. Chief could feel the pressure building. Karen's words were sharp, her tone unwavering, and her presence dominating. But he also understood that she was testing him, trying to see if he could maintain authority and composure under fire. He had to remain calm, no matter how provocative her words became. Chief leaned forward slightly, speaking in a measured tone. Karen, I know you've seen disappointments before, and I respect that you want accountability. That's important. But dismissing all efforts because of past failures doesn't help anyone. We can learn from mistakes, take responsibility, and move forward. That is how progress happens. Karen's eyes narrowed. Progress? You mean endless talking about progress? I don't see it. I see plans that go nowhere, promises that vanish, and meetings that drag on. You think patience and calm words fix everything, but they don't. Action is what matters, not words. Chief paused, letting her words sink in, then spoke with quiet firmness. I agree, Karen. Action is essential, but action without thought can cause harm. We must balance urgency with planning. We must ensure that the actions we take are effective, safe, and inclusive. That is the responsibility of leadership. Karen leaned back and let out a short, sharp laugh. Leadership? You call this leadership? Sitting in a chair, giving speeches, and writing notes while people wait for real results? You're so sure of yourself, but all I see is someone afraid to make bold moves. The room was tense. Some residents shifted in their seats, feeling the weight of the confrontation. Others watched quietly, impressed by Karen's boldness and curious about how Chief would respond. Chief felt the challenge acutely. He could feel the strain on his patience, but he also knew that losing control would only reinforce her criticism. He had to respond with clarity and calm, demonstrating leadership under pressure. Karen, he said slowly, I understand your frustration. I know you value boldness and direct action. I respect that, but leadership is not just about bold moves. It's about responsibility, planning, and considering the impact on everyone. Bold moves without thought can lead to mistakes. That is why we plan, discuss, and organize. Karen's smirk returned, though now it was mixed with a hint of curiosity. Bold moves without thought? Maybe. But sitting and talking forever also fails. You're so focused on avoiding mistakes that you forget people need results, not just words. Chief nodded. You're right. Words alone do not fix problems. Action is necessary. But action guided by reason, strategy, and care ensures that results are meaningful. I believe we can do both, act boldly when needed and plan wisely so our actions have lasting impact. Karen's eyes softened slightly, though her stance remained firm. She wasn't completely convinced, but she seemed willing to listen for the first time. The room, which had been tense and uncertain, began to settle. People sensed that the confrontation was reaching a turning point. Chief had maintained his composure, acknowledged Karen's concerns, and yet asserted his perspective clearly. As the meeting continued, Karen began to offer more specific ideas. She suggested ways to organize volunteers more efficiently, ways to involve younger residents in the festival, and improvements to safety measures around the neighborhood. Her tone remained direct, but it was no longer purely confrontational. Chief listened, validated the points she made, and incorporated some of her ideas into the planning. Other residents, seeing the exchange, started to participate more actively. Karen's boldness had sparked discussion, and Chief's calm guidance had turned tension into constructive collaboration. The meeting, once tense and uncomfortable, became productive. Ideas flowed, tasks were assigned, and solutions began to take shape. By the time the meeting ended, both Chief and Karen had learned something about each other. Karen had tested limits, challenged authority, and demanded attention. Chief had shown patience, calm reasoning, and the ability to guide even the most challenging personality toward productive outcomes. The residents left the community center with a mixture of awe, relief, and renewed energy. They had witnessed a confrontation that could have broken the meeting, but instead became an example of leadership, resilience, and collaboration. Chief sat quietly for a moment, reflecting on the morning and afternoon. He knew that this was not the end. Karen would continue to be a force to reckon with, strong, outspoken, and unyielding. But he also realized that handling such personalities was not about winning arguments or silencing critics. It was about listening, guiding, and creating an environment where even the most challenging voices could contribute meaningfully. Karen, as always, left without a word of praise, a handshake, or a smile. She simply nodded once in Chief's direction, her way of acknowledging that her voice had been heard, and walked out with confidence. Chief watched her go, feeling both exhaustion and satisfaction. He knew that future encounters would test him again, but he felt ready. He had faced a true challenge and emerged stronger, more patient, and more aware of the delicate balance between authority and collaboration. Outside, the sun was lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the streets of Riverview. Residents talked quietly as they left, some replaying the sharp exchange between Chief and Karen, others discussing their own ideas for action. The day had been intense, exhausting, but ultimately productive. Chief knew that leadership was not easy, especially when confronted with personalities like Karen's. But he also knew that patience, respect, and calm reasoning could transform tension into progress and conflict into opportunity. The days following the meeting were unusually quiet in Riverview. The street seemed normal, children played as usual, and shopkeepers greeted their customers with smiles. Yet, there was an undercurrent of conversation that everyone could feel but rarely spoke aloud. The heated exchange between Chief and Karen had not been forgotten. It had left a mark on the community, one that was subtle but persistent. People whispered in small groups, debating what had happened and what it meant for the neighborhood. Some residents admired Karen's boldness. They talked about how she had spoken her mind without fear, questioning authority and challenging the status quo. "At least someone is honest," they said. "She's not afraid to say what everyone thinks but is too polite to admit." Others, however, worried about her approach. "She's too aggressive," they murmured. "She could start more trouble than she solves." Chief, meanwhile, reflected on the confrontation with a mix of thoughts. He had remained calm, guided the conversation toward productive ideas, and even incorporated some of Karen's suggestions. Yet he knew that the situation could not be ignored. Karen's influence was undeniable, but it was unpredictable. Some residents might be inspired by her courage, while others could be unsettled by her intensity. Chief understood that leadership meant more than managing meetings. It meant managing perception, trust, and the community's energy. He spent the following days visiting local residents, talking to them about the meeting and the ideas that had emerged. He wanted to ensure that people felt heard, respected, and included. He also wanted to reassure them that progress was possible, even when challenges arose. People responded positively to his calm approach, sharing their thoughts, concerns, and ideas for improvements in the neighborhood. Chief listened patiently, taking notes and making plans to address each suggestion. Meanwhile, Karen continued her usual routine, undeterred by the attention her actions had drawn. She did not seek approval or validation. She was driven by her own sense of urgency and purpose. Some residents admired her persistence, while others quietly kept their distance, unsure of how to interact with someone so forthright. Karen herself seemed aware of the stir she had caused, but did not appear concerned with how others perceived her. Her focus was on results, on action, and on making a tangible difference in her own way. One afternoon, Chief decided to call a follow-up meeting. The purpose was not only to continue planning community projects, but also to address the energy that had been created by the previous confrontation. He wanted to ensure that everyone could participate constructively, that ideas were implemented effectively, and that the neighborhood continued to work together despite differences. As residents arrived, there was a noticeable buzz in the air. People exchanged quick comments about the previous meeting, some laughing nervously, others still discussing Karen's blunt statements. Chief welcomed everyone with his usual calm demeanor, acknowledging the challenges of working together and emphasizing the importance of cooperation. He reminded everyone that differences in opinion were natural and that what mattered most was how they responded to those differences. Karen arrived as expected, her presence drawing attention immediately. Some residents glanced at her with curiosity, others with cautious admiration. She did not smile or greet anyone formally, but she nodded briefly toward Chief. Her demeanor was as confident and unwavering as ever, and it was clear that she intended to be an active participant once again. The meeting began with discussions about the community festival, neighborhood safety, and volunteer programs. Chief encouraged everyone to speak, including Karen, while reminding participants to listen respectfully to one another. Karen raised several points, some critical, some practical, and Chief addressed each one with patience and clarity. He incorporated her suggestions where appropriate, demonstrating that bold ideas could be valuable when balanced with careful planning. As the discussions progressed, the residents began to see the benefits of the previous confrontation. Karen's directness had brought overlooked issues to the surface, forcing the community to address them. Chief's calm guidance had shown that even challenging personalities could contribute positively if managed with respect and strategy. Slowly, the room's energy shifted from tension to engagement, and people felt empowered to share their thoughts openly. Outside the community center, news of the meetings began to spread. Some neighbors who had not attended heard about the confrontation and the follow-up discussions. Opinions were mixed. Some admired Karen's courage, while others praised Chief's ability to remain composed under pressure. Conversations about accountability, action, and collaboration filled the streets, homes, and local shops. The incident had sparked a renewed interest in community participation, with more residents expressing a desire to be involved in projects and events. Chief realized that the consequences of the confrontation extended beyond the immediate meeting. It had become a catalyst for reflection, dialogue, and action. People were thinking more critically about leadership, responsibility, and communication. They were also observing the different approaches to problem-solving, Karen's bold, assertive style and Chief's calm, strategic approach. Both had strengths and weaknesses, but together they demonstrated that diverse perspectives could lead to more comprehensive solutions. Karen, on her part, continued to engage with the community in her own way. She followed up on her suggestions, spoke to residents directly, and encouraged accountability. Her methods were unconventional and sometimes abrasive, but they had an impact. Residents who had initially been skeptical began to see that her persistence could lead to real change. Karen did not seek recognition or praise. She measured success by results, by action, and by the tangible improvements she could inspire. Chief observed these developments carefully. He understood that leadership was not only about guiding meetings or making plans. It was also about managing relationships, understanding motivations, and finding ways to harness energy, even when it came from challenging personalities. Karen's approach was different, but it complemented his own. Together, in a sense, they created a dynamic that pushed the community forward, even if it was sometimes uncomfortable. In the following weeks, several initiatives began to take shape. Volunteers organized street cleanups, fixed broken streetlights, and monitored traffic safety. Community programs for children and teenagers were planned, incorporating suggestions from both Chief and Karen. The festival, once a source of skepticism for Karen, started to take form with a renewed sense of purpose and organization. Residents were more engaged, contributing ideas, volunteering their time, and feeling a sense of pride in their collective efforts. The neighborhood had changed subtly but noticeably. There was a new energy in the air, a sense that challenges could be faced directly and constructively. The confrontation had sparked dialogue, reflection, and action. People had learned that disagreements, even heated ones, could be productive if handled with respect and patience. Chief and Karen, despite their differences, had inadvertently demonstrated the power of collaboration, showing that contrasting styles could be combined to achieve meaningful results. Even though Karen remained unapologetic and direct, her impact was undeniable. She had shaken the community out of complacency, forcing residents to confront issues they might otherwise have ignored. Chief had provided the steady hand, ensuring that the energy she brought did not descend into chaos. Together, their interaction had created a balance between urgency and planning, between challenge and guidance. As the weeks passed, Chief reflected on the consequences of that heated exchange. It had been difficult, exhausting, and at times stressful, but it had also been transformative. The confrontation had revealed strengths and weaknesses, clarified priorities, and inspired action. Chief knew that challenges like this would continue to arise, and that leadership would always involve navigating personalities, conflicts, and unexpected situations. But he also understood that each challenge was an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to strengthen the community. Karen, true to her nature, continued to engage with the community on her own terms. She remained outspoken, unafraid, and determined to push for results. Some residents found her intense, others admired her courage, and many began to understand that her boldness could drive meaningful change when balanced with thoughtful planning. Chief recognized that, despite their differences, Karen's presence was valuable. She forced attention on overlooked issues, inspired accountability, and challenged complacency. The neighborhood of Riverview had been changed by that confrontation, but in ways that were constructive and positive. Residents were more engaged, more thoughtful, and more willing to participate. Leadership, they realized, was not just about authority or control. It was about listening, guiding, and creating spaces where even challenging personalities could contribute productively. Chief had shown that patience, respect, and calm reasoning could turn conflict into opportunity. Karen had shown that boldness, persistence, and honesty could inspire action. Together, their interaction had left a lasting mark on the community. By the end of the month, the community projects were underway, and the residents felt a renewed sense of purpose. Streets were safer, parks cleaner, and the festival preparations were moving forward. Conversations among neighbors were more thoughtful, with people considering multiple perspectives before forming opinions. The energy that Karen had brought and the guidance Chief had provided had transformed tension into progress. Chief often reflected quietly on the events. He knew that leadership was a constant test of patience, understanding, and adaptability. Challenges like Karen's were not obstacles but opportunities to strengthen the community, to test his own skills, and to demonstrate that even difficult situations could be turned into positive outcomes. The neighborhood had learned that progress required both action and planning, urgency and patience, boldness and guidance. And in the quiet satisfaction of seeing real change, Chief knew that the consequences of that heated exchange would continue to ripple through Riverview, shaping its growth for months and years to come. As the weeks turned into a month, Riverview had transformed in ways that were subtle but deeply meaningful. The heated confrontation between Chief and Karen had left a lasting imprint on the neighborhood, shaping not only how people approached community projects, but also how they interacted with each other. The energy from that meeting, which had once seemed tense and uncomfortable, had evolved into motivation, engagement, and collaboration. Chief observed these changes with a sense of quiet satisfaction, realizing that challenges often held hidden opportunities. The community festival, which had been a source of debate and tension, was finally coming together. Volunteers were setting up decorations, planning food stalls, organizing games for children, and preparing performances by local talent. Streets were being cleaned, lights were being checked, and safety measures were in place. Chief watched the preparations with pride. The festival was no longer just an event. It was a symbol of resilience, cooperation, and growth. It represented the power of constructive dialogue, even when it had begun in conflict. Karen, true to her nature, was actively involved. She moved quickly from booth to booth, checking progress, giving direct instructions, and reminding volunteers of deadlines. Some residents were intimidated by her confidence, while others appreciated her focus and determination. She was unapologetic about her methods, but Chief could see the value in her approach. Karen's insistence on results had pushed the community to move faster and more efficiently than it might have otherwise. Her presence was disruptive at times, yes, but it had also driven meaningful progress. Chief, meanwhile, moved among the volunteers with his usual calm demeanor. He offered guidance, answered questions, and encouraged residents to stay organized and work together. Unlike Karen, he focused on patience, careful planning, and ensuring that everyone felt included. His approach provided balance to Karen's intensity, creating an atmosphere where energy and discipline complemented each other rather than clashing. Together, their contrasting styles had created a dynamic that propelled the community forward. As the festival day approached, residents began to reflect on what had changed since that initial meeting. Streets that had once been neglected were cleaner, public spaces were safer, and residents were more willing to engage in community activities. The heated confrontation between Chief and Karen, which had once caused anxiety and tension, was now seen in a new light. People realized that the clash had sparked a chain reaction of reflection, dialogue, and action. It had been a turning point, challenging them to consider multiple perspectives and embrace both urgency and patience. On the morning of the festival, Chief arrived early at the community center. The streets were already bustling with volunteers setting up tents, arranging tables, and hanging banners. Karen arrived soon after, moving purposefully through the crowd, checking on preparations and giving direct instructions where needed. The contrast between her brisk, no-nonsense approach and Chief's calm, inclusive guidance created a balance that ensured every detail was addressed. Residents were inspired by the harmony of differing leadership styles working toward a common goal. As the festival began, Chief and Karen both observed the unfolding event. Children laughed as they played games, neighbors greeted each other warmly, and the aroma of fresh food filled the air. The music, decorations, and colorful stalls created a lively atmosphere, one that seemed to erase the tension of past weeks. Chief felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The challenges, the disagreements, and the heated exchanges had all contributed to this moment of communal joy and achievement. Karen, meanwhile, seemed less concerned with the celebration itself and more focused on the results. She moved from group to group, asking whether tasks had been completed, whether volunteers were following the schedule, and whether the event was running smoothly. Her presence was intense, but Chief could see that her dedication had played a significant role in the festival's success. Without her insistence on action, some details might have been overlooked and progress might have slowed. Residents began to notice the unique dynamic between Chief and Karen. While their approaches were different, one calm and patient, the other bold and assertive, they had managed to complement each other. People started discussing how effective collaboration could be when contrasting personalities were guided by mutual respect and shared goals. The community learned a subtle but powerful lesson. Progress was not about avoiding conflict, but about channeling energy and ideas constructively. Throughout the festival, Chief reflected on his experiences over the past month. He realized that leadership was not simply about authority or control. It was about listening carefully, understanding diverse perspectives, and guiding people toward meaningful outcomes. Karen had challenged him in ways he had not anticipated, forcing him to test his patience, refine his communication, and remain composed under pressure. Though her methods were unconventional, they had been effective, and Chief had learned that leadership sometimes required flexibility and openness to unexpected approaches. Karen, for her part, seemed unchanged on the surface. She remained outspoken, direct, and unapologetic. But Chief noticed subtle shifts in her interactions with others. She began to acknowledge when volunteers had done a good job, even if briefly. She asked questions that encouraged collaboration rather than just criticism. It was clear that the confrontation and subsequent cooperation had influenced her approach slightly, demonstrating that even strong personalities could evolve when focused on common goals. By the afternoon, the festival was in full swing. Residents shared meals, enjoyed performances, and participated in games and activities. Conversations were filled with laughter, shared memories, and discussions about future projects. Chief observed quietly, proud of the community's resilience and growth. He understood that the heated exchange with Karen had been a catalyst for change. It had sparked reflection, encouraged participation, and ultimately strengthened the sense of unity among neighbors. As the day drew to a close, Chief and Karen stood together, watching the sunset over Riverview. The festival had been a success, not just because of the activities or decorations, but because of the transformation that had taken place within the community. Residents were more engaged, more willing to work together, and more confident in their ability to tackle challenges collectively. Chief reflected on the lessons learned. Patience, respect, and calm reasoning were powerful tools, but so were boldness, persistence, and directness. Both were necessary for meaningful change. Karen, as always, remained unapologetic. She did not offer praise or seek recognition. Her satisfaction came from seeing results, from knowing that her persistence had influenced real progress. Chief understood this about her and appreciated that her approach, though challenging at times, had been instrumental in achieving the festival's success. The community had benefited from their combined efforts, learning that differing perspectives could coexist productively. In the days following the festival, Riverview continued to flourish. Streets were cleaner, public spaces were safer, and residents felt more connected to one another. Community projects continued, with volunteers inspired by the success of the festival and motivated by the lessons learned from Chief and Karen's interactions. People approached challenges with a new understanding of balance, appreciating both careful planning and decisive action. Chief often reflected quietly on the past month. He knew that leadership was not easy, especially when confronted with strong, challenging personalities. But he also realized that such challenges were opportunities for growth, for both himself and the community. Karen's boldness had tested him, pushed him to remain patient, and reminded him that even difficult encounters could lead to positive outcomes. The community, in turn, had learned that disagreements and tension, when managed constructively, could spark innovation, engagement, and progress. By the end of the month, Riverview had become a stronger, more connected community. Residents were proud of what they had accomplished together and inspired by the collaboration between Chief and Karen. The confrontation that had once seemed so intense had become a defining moment, a lesson in leadership, resilience, and the power of working together despite differences. Chief understood that the neighborhood would face more challenges in the future, but he felt confident that the lessons learned from Karen's boldness and his own calm guidance would continue to shape positive outcomes for years to come. As the sun set over Riverview, Chief stood quietly, reflecting on the journey. The heated words, the tension, and the confrontation had all led to growth, understanding, and community spirit. Karen, in her own way, had played a vital role in this transformation. And though she remained unapologetic and independent, her impact was undeniable. Together, Chief and Karen had demonstrated that leadership was not about avoiding conflict, but about guiding energy, managing personalities, and turning challenges into opportunities for meaningful change. The festival had ended, but its impact was only beginning. Riverview had learned that collaboration, respect, patience, and bold action could coexist. The heated words that had once caused tension had become the foundation for understanding, progress, and connection. Chief and Karen, despite their differences, had shown the community that even the most challenging encounters could lead to growth, and that leadership was about harnessing the strengths of every individual for the greater good. As night fell, the streets of Riverview were quiet, but the spirit of the community was alive. People walked home with smiles, children laughed in the distance, and the sense of pride and accomplishment lingered in the air. Chief knew that the journey was ongoing, that challenges would continue to arise, and that strong personalities would always test patience and leadership. But he also knew that with respect, understanding, and collaboration, even the most heated exchanges could lead to lasting, positive change.